Thank you all so much for being here. I'll give a brief introduction and pass it off as quickly as I can to our speakers. So hi, I'm Lauren. I lead our content marketing efforts here at HumanFirst. I'm excited to welcome you to our webinar, From Proof of Concept to Product, Prompt and Data Engineering for Enterprises. So I'll share a few words about our speakers and then pass it off quickly. Our mission at HumanFirst is to equip companies with the tools they need to find and solve real problems with reliable AI. We're excited about the very real-time developments that are powering the uptake of generative AI, and we're even more excited about the tools and strategies that will keep humans in the driver's seat. So in that spirit, we're very excited to have Eddie with us. Eddie White is the head of Emerging GenAI and Machine Learning Partnerships with Google Cloud. Eddie and his team at Google are committed to making GenAI more intuitive, useful, accessible, and helping to build GenAI into every enterprise workflow. Eddie and team have launched some of the most exciting GenAI startups on Google Cloud in 2023, including Typeface, Snorkel, Runway ML, to name a very short list. Eddie is joined by Gregory Whiteside, HumanFirst's CEO. Greg has extensive background in bringing deep technology products to the hands of customers. He started HumanFirst with a mission to help companies get more out of the data they have and build real solutions to real customer problems. And now it's to leverage GenAI to solve those problems more efficiently, repeatedly, and reliably. So today you'll hear both Eddie and Greg share their reflections on what was inarguably a landmark year in the story of enterprise AI. They'll discuss a crawl, walk, run approach to getting from proof of concept to product. And Greg will also share a workflow to demonstrate how that applies to a real business use case and how prompt and data engineering can accelerate time to value and maybe more importantly, time to trust. Quick few words on our partnership with Google. We became a Google partner in June of last year to help Google customers leverage the data they have across the GCP ecosystem. Our Vertex AI integration also makes it easy to work with custom prompts and models in a collaborative playground environment where you can divide and conquer your real business data and collaborate across teams, technical and otherwise. Our platform runs on top of Google's architecture, so you can bring in data from Dialogflow or BigQuery and start to use this prompt and data engineering workflow to organize and action data that's otherwise difficult to access. So we believe this newly generative future of business requires new tools, and that's why we're excited to partner with Google Cloud to put those tools in the hands of more teams early on. So I'll now welcome our speakers, Eddie and Greg, to kick off the discussion. Thank you.
Hi, Greg. I think you're going first.
Yes. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, so it's been an exciting year, 2023 on many fronts, and 2024 is promising to be even more exciting in the industry and for the development timeline of generative AI. And for HumanFirst, as a Google partner, I'm really glad to be here with Eddie to explore this and to talk about some of the things that we're anticipating will happen in the year ahead. And it's a particularly exciting and motivating moment to be having these conversations when we see that the analysts and all the talk is confirming just how fast generative AI adoption has occurred within enterprise, but also within every company. So according to Deloitte, more than 70% of companies are currently experimenting with generative AI. And in fact, it's a higher number than that, depending on the research you read. But what's particularly interesting is that while almost all companies are prioritizing and at that experimentation stage, only a very, very, very small fraction of those are saying they're moving into scaled production. And we certainly see that majority of customers and companies working on experimenting and on trying to get ROI out of generative AI on the ground. And we think, based on what we're seeing and what we're learning, is that in 2023, a lot of approaches to the testing and experimentation that teams did started really showing results, and learnings and techniques and best practices clearly appeared and matured. And because of that, a lot of confidence has settled in that is going to drive a lot of continued investment in generative AI. So, for example, RAG, retrieval augmented generation, was quickly identified and then developed and productized successfully by a lot of teams. And that helps those teams really efficiently use their own data with pre-trained models without requiring fine-tuning, which is a more technical and costly step. That massively accelerated development timelines for certain types of use cases, reduced the costs, and motivated and increased or allowed teams to imagine and to confirm a lot of the potential use cases that they can solve with generative AI. Another really exciting development that we saw was the explosion of the context size for prompts and models. So if we look at the starting context size, which is effectively the amount of data that you can dynamically pass into a large language model when prompting it, we're now at sizes where very powerful models are allowing you to ingest more than 100,000 tokens, which is a size of a novel. And that's making it much more easy for teams to understand how to build and test very quick POCs, because it allows load, basically use the data that they have directly, either within RAG or within the prompt context window, and put that data to work. So we've seen a simplification in a sense of the problem of using generative AI, especially in the early stages, to get something that shows promise and value. And so as a result, the testing and experimenting is helping move beyond the technical departments, where a lot of the initial efforts that we saw in 2023 with data science and machine learning teams were happening. And we're seeing more and more business stakeholders, people, for example, on the product management side, getting down and getting their hands actually dirty in validating and building POCs, and that can show some return and warrant continued investment. So it's clear that the POCs that were started and that we're seeing continue into this year are already yielding a lot of positive results. And so this is going to drive a lot of new product developments and investments. We pretty much posit across all teams and all companies. And it's going to drive a lot of new go-to-market strategies for these companies. And so the result is that we're going to see a lot of new learnings and value produced throughout 2024. And this is exciting for everyone involved in this field. So I'm going to hand it off to Eddie now, who's got feet on the ground and is pursuing these same goals of understanding and making sure that the value brought to customers is done as quickly and efficiently as possible. And I'm curious to hear your side on what you're seeing on the enterprise side and how that compares, let's say, today to what we were seeing at this time last year.
Cool. Thanks very much, Greg. Really great to be here. Thanks also to you and the rest of the HumanFirst team for being such a fantastic generative AI partner for us. One of my favorite things to do is to talk about what the technology actually does in real life. So excited to share that. Maybe thanks for, excuse me, thanks to our audience as well. We look forward to questions. So I believe that there's a process by which you can submit questions to us here. And you won't have to search too far to find either Gregory or myself on LinkedIn if you want to follow up and have any direct questions with us later. But let's try and make this interactive. So a little bit about why I'm here. So at Google Cloud, we have a select accelerator for emerging, exciting generative AI partners that we look for to bring value to our customers. And that is how the HumanFirst and Google Cloud partnership was born. And we are always looking for something that, as in the slide that Lauren showed, that can bring value to customers using Google Cloud's existing technologies. And what we really loved about the HumanFirst solution was how much value it provided to three key pillars of the Google Cloud overall technology stack that our customers use. BigQuery, which is a major data platform for us, everybody probably knows. Dialogflow, and of course Vertex, which hosts all of our AI capabilities, including the recently announced Gemini models. We recruit across all parts of the stack. We recruit across the foundation model level. Some of the names were mentioned, Mistral. You saw a recent announcement with Hugging Face. We recruit at the application layer. But one of the most exciting things we've seen is, and I'll refer to something Greg said about the tooling layer. There's been some phenomenal developments there at a very accelerated pace to enable customers to be able to do much more rapid iteration and ideation on some of their use cases. And HumanFirst fits into that category for us, because what they've enabled us to do is bring AI to our customers' data where it's most valuable to them. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. The data is the most critical asset for all POCs, proof of values, and generative AI deployments. And it's very important that as a customer, if you're listening, that you understand that the data is where the signals are. It's where the answers to the questions you have is. And we look at partners like HumanFirst to help our customers to get there. But it all really begins with the data and activating the value in that data in order to find solutions to real world problems. So we've seen our partners engage in a significant number of enterprise pilots over the last 12 months. And even in the first weeks of this year, that trend has actually continued. And there's a tremendous amount of interest in the enterprise in getting value from AI. They're getting board level pressure from the top down. They have business needs that need to be met, and the answer lies in AI. So that is one thing that we're seeing. We're also seeing the trend that Gregory talked about, which is it is moved outside of the data science world. And we have business customers and people from the line of business looking to Google Cloud and to our partners like HumanFirst for solutions. The other thing that we're seeing is there's budget for this. So the enterprise has carved out budget to fund these business value driven experiments in order to test where they can make significant improvements to their business. And the initial buzz and the hype around the technology has worn off now. And the trend of experimenting for the sake of experimenting has passed, I would say, from what we see. And increasingly, our customers are asking very early in the discussion the business value question, the business use case question. And it's really important for the ISV community and for Google to be able to articulate that by using Google's AI capabilities, by using the HumanFirst capabilities with our AI, that we can deliver a real business value. So when I've seen numbers like 90% of POCs go into production, that's almost always the fault of not clearly defining what the POC is, not clearly defining tangible results, not clearly defining what problem you're trying to solve. Our customers on the ground have got a myriad of problems they're trying to tackle. The economy has been challenging, as we all know, over the last 12 to 24 months. They want to know, how is Google and HumanFirst going to save me money? How is Google Cloud and HumanFirst going to accelerate my position in the market? How is it going to grow my revenue? Those are the questions that are being asked. And if not, and if you're an ISV vendor out there, you should be making sure your customer's asking those questions. And if you're a customer and you're calling Google Cloud and you're calling Gregory and you're saying, we want to take a look at your product, have a clear idea of what problem you want to solve, and have a clear idea of how you want to get there. And that will give you the ability then to drive the efficiencies you're looking for, and to drive the effectively that you're looking for, and to drive the revenue you're looking for. The other thing that we see is there is a consolidation of early experiments have been done in places like where the customer meets the enterprise. The customers, the Google Cloud customers serve massive customer bases themselves. And there's customer friction, customer success, customer satisfaction. There's signal around product success, product adoption. We're also seeing supply chain being attacked and pursued by AI solutions. So there's some of the earlier use cases that have made it across that 10% threshold into production with clearly defined outcomes. And content deployment is the other one. The ability to be able to do large scale outreach, highly targeted to a specific customer base is one. So it's a super exciting time. And as customers continue to store more and more data in Google Cloud and on our platforms, they're looking for a way for a single workflow to be able to help them experiment, figure out what the answer to the problem is, and then iterate on that really quickly. I'll finish maybe with a word on the data, and that would be the data really matters. If you're either the buyer of the AI technology or the seller of the AI technology, it's really critical that you explore the value of your data, where it is. Do you have the right data sets, and the right quantity and quality of data to meet the needs of the problem you're trying to solve to give you the answer? So that's what I see. There's definitely still some challenges, but we are definitely seeing a spike in early successes. And I think we'll be sitting here in 12 months' time, and that 10% number will be closer to 40, 50%.
Yeah, well said. And it's interesting because I think, as you're saying, on one side, we have more and more data that should be driving a lot of really high quality and high value AI projects. And we have really performant models. A few months ago, Google announced Gemini, their largest model, available through Vertex. This is multimodal. It's, on the benchmarks hitting, the top marks. So allowing to do all kinds of really, all kinds of tasks and basically solve for every use case that companies, should be looking to turn to generative AI for. So we have more data and we have the models, but so we're only seeing 10% of those POCs actually making it to production today. So on the ground, like where are you seeing companies getting stuck today?
There's a tendency in the customer base to go for the home run first. And they take on a very large project. It's extremely ambitious, probably not adequately scoped, often not correctly resourced. So we see the challenges lie there. If everybody wants to hit the home run, but you've got to get a couple of singles first. That's a baseball euphemism for the non-Americans, and I'm one, but I've learned it. And so we've seen that being a challenge. And Gregory has this model he's using here, crawl, walk, run. We certainly see that as a solution to some of the places where customers get stuck. So have, as I mentioned earlier, a clear definition of what you're looking for. And I would strongly encourage everybody, go for a quick win. Go for a quick result that'll charge up your organization, encourage people to learn more, educate people more on the capability of solutions like HumanFirst and what Google has with Vertex. Have a budget to test it, and I don't just mean the dollars, but carve out the headcount from your team to support the POC to be successful and have the data ready. So that's where customers are getting stuck, is they've seen a demo of Bard, they've seen a demo of somebody who's watching Lumiere, our new multimodal text to video model. They get all excited and they want to make a 4-hour movie. Maybe do something a little less ambitious, more out to be more successful. And then the other thing I think the customers should focus on would be where you are meeting your customer success, customer engagement, customer sentiment, operational efficiencies. If you get operational efficiencies and they drive either a cost reduction or a revenue increase, your boss is going to give you more money to spend more money to do more AI projects to deliver value for the organization. So be targeted and be very focused and look for a business tangible win, and then pick the right partners like Gregory and his team who can, and Gregory will show this in a second, how with what HumanFirst has as a technology and a capability along with what Google Cloud brings, the ability for you to very quickly experiment and very quickly iterate to find that success. So that's kind of where we see customers getting stuck, I would say, Gregory.
That's so in terms of the crawl, walk, run, I think, it's what we're seeing as well in terms of the successful POCs and where we see customers, getting those first few wins that confirm that there's ROI to be made. And before going too far and before going too deep within a project, really validating that, showing it, as you said, to the team, and showing how that same approach then can be scaled. So walking and then finally running. And
Right.
what's interesting, I think, with this across the market is that this same kind of crawl, walk, run is really applicable at a macro level, almost in terms of how, when you think of the problems that you need to solve within, let's say, enterprise, again, there you cannot solve all of the problems. So trying to identify and start with the lowest hanging fruit, identifying kind of within all the problems that might be there, maybe starting with the domain expertise and the instinct that you as a business have around where problems can be, and digging in really to figure out how can we solve one of these things that might be very severe with Gen AI, to show that afterwards this can be something that we take to the rest of the similar problems.
Yeah, I agree. We had one. I've seen one example of that quite starkly, where a very large multinational, multi-billion-dollar consumer goods company, where they service over 95% of their customers via big box retailers and an intermediary, and they have less than 5% of their business today that is direct to consumer. And they had a goal last year to increase that significantly, because there's a very different margin profile between what they can service direct to consumer versus the obvious margin they give up to the middlemen who are moving their product for them. And so they began a project believing that they thought that the issue was that they could not reach the customers, and customers were not coming to them to attempt to buy directly. So they started off with that as the project, and they went and had the data. And when they looked, they discovered that a significant number of end users were coming to this company's website and attempting to purchase the product directly. But the experience was so poor, they abandoned carts and they abandoned the process long before they got the opportunity to hit the buy button and ship it. And Amazon has taught all of us that you can pretty much buy anything you want online now, and that's really simple. And what was an obvious market data point was lost on this company until they looked at the data and found this isn't a reach problem. This is an experience when they come to my homepage problem. So then they began using AI to significantly clean up that workflow of how Greg goes on and looks to buy this company's product, and he can, in less than 5 steps, go from picking the product to getting it to checkout and put in the UPS truck. That exercise, as simple as that sound, is going to yield millions and millions of dollars in revenue margin for this company. And then they can go on and use AI to explore scaled content creation to target more Gregory's and Eddie's to buy more of their stuff. And the answer was in the data. They just didn't know. But they iterated very quickly. And when they discovered what the actual problem was, not what her hypothesis was, they were able to quickly figure that out. And now they're in the process of improving it and going at scale. So the data will tell you quickly once you iterate on it, is kind of the moral of that story, I think. So crawl is the first piece of the analogy that, is in your narrative, Greg. And I think that's what they did first. Then they found the low-hanging fruit, which is the walk piece. They've begun training their people on this, and now everybody knows this is a priority, and now they can hit the gas and they can run. So that iterate capability is really key.
Yeah. And interestingly, so the crawl, walk, run, also coming back a bit to what we were saying at the beginning of what we saw happen last year, I think we also saw this crawl, walk, run best practice kind of start being adopted across companies where, it was unclear when ChatGPT came out, and which really spearheaded all this excitement, what was the actual way to start using large language models. And So a lot of teams, as we said, kind of started on the technical side, trying to
Right.
fine-tune models, right? Build their own models to realize, well, maybe that's actually not the most efficient way to get value. And so from that perspective, like the Gen AI adoption and application within companies, what we're seeing is that the crawl stage, you know, is really applying prompts. So prompting is a very fast way, very easy way for anyone really to interact with the large language model and to start validating whether, you can teach via a prompt a large language model to execute a task that would otherwise be done by a human, for example. And so on a very small scale, that type of prompt can be tested on a bit of data to see if it works. Walking, means deploying that prompt, which might be powering a feature. So we saw some really kind of cool features come out with a lot of SaaS platforms. For example, Loom now automatically proposing summarizations and next action items after calls. So those are all things that, are set up by teams as a POC with a prompt, then deployed, and that deployment allows real data to continue coming in to improve, via that same approach of prompting the results and to be able to capture more and more edge cases. And then the run phase that we see also teams, as they get more and more ROI, then it's becoming kind of how do we optimize this so that we can, do this at lesser cost or that we can ensure faster responses. And that's often when, because the use case itself, the business value itself has been proven, then looking to, take that data in order to fine tune something that is going to be a large language model that can be more efficient. That makes sense because you've really proven out the business value. And so this is an exciting kind of evolution because we do think it encourages and it allows teams to think about a very simple way to start and to always say, we will start with this instead of, trying to fine tune a very large model from the beginning.
Yeah, we loved that about what you were doing. It was one of the things we saw, probably the most impactful thing for our customers using Vertex and using BigQuery was the fact that, save the people with CS degrees. These large language models are complex. They are amazing pieces of engineering and compute. But for a regular business person who has very tough business goals, it's very hard to understand. They're sort of abstract of how a large language model or Gemini can help me, triple my D2C goal for 2024. But the prompt is sort of like the BARD interface. It's the translator, which allows somebody without that data science knowledge to be able to interact with it and capture its power on top of the platform that we provide. So we loved that, the ability to simplify and abstract the complexity, still make it available, but allow you to use it and iterate it quickly. I think you're right. We love that. And we see that being extremely compelling for our customers this year.
And are there any areas, so in this crawl, walk, run, where it starts with prompts and with data, as we said at the beginning, are there specific areas where you're seeing companies getting stuck, even within that
I think
crawl?
the first, I mentioned the first one. The other two that I would pick on is education. I think it falls to us as partners, you and I, and our ecosystem to educate customers. And customers need to have their teams educated on what AI is and what it means beyond interacting with Bard or ChatGPT or Claude. They're extremely clever. It's magic because it is, but you really gotta have knowledge, and you've got to be educated and smart about the nuances of the technology. How does RAG affect what I'm doing? What is prompt engineering? Spend time on your prompt. Spend time on iterating on that. So education matters, and it falls to Google Cloud and it falls to HumanFirst to help educate and teach our customers. We are doing a lot of that. I would tell you personally, I'm probably spending 7 to 9 hours a week personally just keeping up, reading papers, watching webinars like this one from other companies to make sure I understand. So I think education and closing the education gap is important. And then I think we also have to help them get started. letting somebody, if I have a boss who used to say it to me, letting people run around with scissors is not a good idea. And I do think we have to help the enterprise get started, and we have to go into that first POC and roll our sleeves up with them and see the success with them and see the finish line and help them get started. We can't really just hand them the tech and assume, even as simple as we've made it, that they'll figure it out. I think it's up to us to help them. So they're the other two things I would call out.
Yeah. One additional thing, and I think this is a segue a bit into some of the solutions to help customers start, or at least accelerate that crawl, walk, run journey, is that the prompting and figuring out like how to write and tune that prompt, that is the basis for how the LLM is going to give you
Right.
value, and applying that to your data. I think that's where we really see still a gap, in the sense that it's still hard to do this in a way that allows teams to easily iterate and to backtest and to get to a state where they've not only written a prompt, but have really validated that the performance of that prompt against a lot of their existing data, it works, and that therefore they can trust it if when they deploy it. And so that seems to be something where, a lot of it depends on the connection that you're able to create between this activity of prompt engineering that's open to everyone, available to non-technical users, but also efficiently being able to work with data that is, very large in scale, but also very, very difficult in certain cases to, work with, because it's unstructured data. It's data that's, not easy to curate or to pinpoint and to select, very specific kind of data that you need for a specific task. And so that's another problem that we're kind of see has been halting, or at least being a friction point for companies that are trying to go on this journey.
Totally agree.
So there's two assumptions that we've kind of, when we talk to companies, the first question, there's two kind of questions that people have. And to your point about education and about awareness, I think it comes down to really fundamentally understanding some of the limitations that, as you try to apply large language models to use cases, you hit. And so as we see teams get into this experimentation in POC, like one of the assumptions that we see is that you can easily apply an LLM to a large amount of data, ingest or give it a lot of amounts of data and ask it to analyze that data, for example, via prompt, without losing precision and without losing, quality, and that you can do that without high cost or latency. So it feels almost, because the maybe the hype factor, but that LLMs appear to be so powerful, and because context sizes are becoming so big, that you can really, it's as simple as, giving all of the data and then asking, questions, a bit like you do in ChatGPT. And that works for very, very kind of basic type of interactions. But from a repeatability perspective, it's really hard to actually use large language models that way with a lot of data without breaking it down. Imagine you have 100,000 call center transcripts, and you want to determine whether agents are following protocol for a certain type of problem that customers are having. So that is something that, the naive approach is thinking I can load one day those 100,000 conversations into a single prompt and simply ask the LLM, are they following the protocol? But as we know, there's still a lot of cases of hallucination, and simply cases where it might not even be a hallucination. It might be that haven't framed the problem and given the right instructions to get the right output. And so this is really one of the key problems that we see preventing teams from really going very quickly beyond that crawl and walk is realizing that you have to be able to really work with the right data and limit that data as much as possible in the early stages of the crawl so that you're only analyzing and observing the output of an LLM for data that you understand and that you trust, so that you're able to improve on the LLM in a very, very tight feedback loop. And so that's that initial assumption. We see most teams, when they get into the actual nitty-gritty of the problems, they realize that the quality of that data and their ability to go into really pinpoint only specific data that pertains to that crawl POC is absolutely necessary. Yeah, had something to say?
Can't wait to see it.
Cool. And the other thing related to that, and I'll jump after that straight into the demo because this is kind of explaining a bit some of the workflows. But the POC performance that you get, let's say with a specific prompt and data, it's often exciting because you feel like you've really kind of in a very short amount of time gotten a large language model to solve a problem for you. And especially if you give it a bit of data and it seems like it works. And I think that's what we learned from all our previous years working on AI problems, is that most teams get to a point where things work to a certain extent with a small amount of data. But in real world, in production environments, and as they extend the type of data that they're going to encounter, the results really become varied, and they realize they need to continually improve that prompt based on that feedback of data. And so this continuous improvement is something that,
It's got
again,
to be an open loop all the time.
yeah, so that's preventing teams from going, beyond the walk to the run. And it's a necessary step to figure out where and be able to pinpoint exactly how the large language models need to improve.
I agree. Actually, Azi in the questions asked a question you just answered, which is he wants to know, how do you know if the POC is ready to go into production or not? It's not easy to evaluate the AI outputs with Gen AI, and sort of you're right, Azzy, but I think the way Greg just described it there is the answer. You first, as we said a few minutes ago, have a clear goal of what outcome you're looking for. You want to improve customer response by X. You want to get DTC up by, whatever it is, get your DTC number up by 20%. So have a clear goal, then align the data, but then keep an open loop using your prompts on your data until you get the answer you're looking for. Keep iterating on it until you get the answer. But set the goal first. Don't just apply an AI solution like Greg's and ours to a data set looking for answers. Determine what answer you're looking for, and then iterate your way there. And when you get to the answer, that's success. You now know that this works, and you can deploy that, and you can try another project or be more ambitious with a larger data set. But that's how I would answer your question, Azzy. I hope that's helpful.
Well, so I think we can maybe jump into a demo showing this crawl, walk, run approach, which we're seeing really has a lot of benefits and great results, where the crawl is effectively start with a prompt, test it against a bit of data. Walk is bring more data in and validate that it continues working with more scale. And then run is maybe applying that process or that approach to a wider set of use cases. And so one of the applications for prompt and data engineering is to improve conversational AI systems. And this is one of the areas where we've seen a lot of use cases for prompt and data engineering. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So the use case we're going to look at is something that you would expect that you can do with an LLM today. So if you're familiar with conversational AI, you know that for the most part, and even with generative AI now improving the way that you can build chatbots, there's still a very high dependency on hard coding the flows that we're going to support complex transactional use cases. So we're not at the point of having a large language model, take on the entire responsibility of a chatbot. And frankly, it's debatable whether or how fast we'll ever get there. So arguably one of the hardest parts of building a really good chatbot that is going to account for all of the logic that otherwise a human would do is to identify all of the edge cases and all of the conditional flows that need to happen in order to provide that great experience. And so this sounds like a great job for a large language model because if you have a lot of conversational data that shows how human agents have handled conversations, you have a great starting point to bootstrap how a chatbot should behave. So we're going to show how we can break this type of problem using the crawl, walk, run approach. And so to validate that we can actually do this, generate the playbook that a chatbot is going to follow from the raw unstructured data that you have, for example, in your call center logs. All right, so I'm going to dive into HumanFirst. So I'm going to open a workspace. I've already preloaded the conversational data that I'm going to use to bootstrap this conversational flow. So these conversations are from an e-commerce support setting. And you can see this data at the individual level. And you can also open and see that these sentences come from very long form conversations between two agents. So when you explore this data, you see that there's all kinds of conversations happening. There's conversations about people asking for a refund policy, about losing items. And so we're going to find obviously dozens, perhaps even hundreds of different flows that a chatbot would need to be trained on. So if we go back to our initial problem, we have a hunch that we can use this data to build a chatbot flow. But the first step is to validate that that's doable. And so we're going to start with a single type of use case, a single type of customer request, and validate that we can do it just with those. And so we're going to start, and again, from a crawl, walk, run perspective, what we need to do, therefore, is to find conversations that match that particular type of request. And in this case, we're going to look for conversations of users who are complaining about not having received a package. So in HumanFirst, you can give an example of how a customer would say this, and then use semantic search to find in all your conversations the similar types of things that customers have said. Semantic search is the basis for RAG, for retrieval augmented generation. And so you can think of this a bit like a human in the loop RAG, right? I give it an input and it will find and allow me to select a lot of other data that is similar to what I just inputted. And so this allows me to build and bring together a list of conversations that should be the starting point for that bootstrapping process. So I have here 10 conversations, sorry. And if you look at this, some of these conversations, that is clearly why the person was calling in. And so I ordered something and I haven't got the package. If you look, so that is really the reason why the person is interacting. But then there's also cases where that semantic search, brings up something where in the conversation, the user does say, I don't have, I didn't receive the package, or I don't have the shipping status. But the full conversation is actually not about that. And so the protocol that the agent is going to follow for this is very different from the protocol he would follow for someone calling about a lost package or package not received. So if we include this data to build a flow for a chatbot, we're going to get bad results. And so this is kind of the first step where you realize that semantic similarity and in general, kind of the tools that give us this type of data, you still really need human intervention to be able to make sense and make sure that it's high quality. So the walk approach now for selecting these conversations that match what we're looking for is to say, let's use a large language model to find to tell us which are the conversations that people were actually calling in about a package that wasn't received. And we can do that by using and creating a custom prompt. So a prompt that will allow us to, take a full, very noisy conversation and reduce it to something much, much simpler to understand. For example, tell us, is this conversation actually about not having received my order? So you see here, we've created a prompt, and we're going to run that prompt and apply it to every one of those 10 conversations. And this is going to give us now a much more compact and much easier way to decide on whether we should be including the conversation in our training work. So you see here that we have, for example, refund for unshipped status. That's not a conversation about somebody who didn't receive his package. And so we can take this signal and now select only the conversations that are actually about a package not received. And you can look at the source conversation behind this and see that indeed these conversations describe the protocol that a chatbot should eventually choose. And that's what we're going to do now. So we have selected and kind of filtered down using semantic search, but also a custom prompt, and found a subset of data representing really quality. And now we're going to write a prompt that's going to help us extract from these conversations the actual flow that a chatbot should follow. So you see you're tasked with building a chatbot, create a flow, and we give it instructions saying, these you should be using nodes, you should be using conditional logic, jumping between nodes. And what's really important here is that we're going to run this not against each conversation in parallel, but we're going to squash all of the conversations so that we can analyze them all together and basically compile all of that to give a single output, which is a flow that accounts for all of the logic found in these 6 different conversations. So when we run this prompt, we'll see the output of this. And this is going to be the starting point for this chatbot. And so you see here, we've generated kind of the nodes with the connections with them. There's conditional logic saying, depending on this or this condition, jump to the node. And that logic is really there because we've considered 6 conversations. And so there's different things happening in those conversations that a chatbot needs to know about. Now, what's interesting is, of course, this prompt that we've created that outputs this, you're likely going to want to, iterate on that prompt. For example, because the format that it's giving this out is not what is going to be useful to you. And you could want to format this in a way that you can put it into a tool that will show you visually the flow. So there's text to flowchart programs, for example. Or a lot of conversational AI platforms now are allowing you to express flows in natural language, and they'll create the visual flow for you. So this step can be, if you change the way the prompt outputs your data, it allows you to quickly put that into another system that will interpret it and turn it into something really useful. I'm going to stop there because we only have 5 minutes left, and I do want to leave time for the viewers. I'll just finish to say, basically, the rest of the demo, which I'll be happy to share and talk about. After this step, we've trained this and created a flow from 6 conversations. The next step, the walk step from this, is to say, let's find all of the conversations in my data that matches this type of topic. And let's create another prompt that is going to say, for each one of these, what is the protocol that we've created here not accounting for? Tell me the nodes, tell me the steps, tell me the conditions that you found in new conversations that we should be adding and incorporating in order to make this, as reliable as possible. And so this is really the iterative human in the loop kind of crawl, walk, run. But as you see, it took no time to pinpoint and to find the exact data to start figuring out, can I generate this kind of thing in the first place?
So Greg, while you were doing that, I went into the Q&A and I answered some of the questions that I was able to. There's a couple for you. So maybe, Lauren, I'm not sure how you want to do that, but there are some questions in there specific to HumanFirst.
Yeah, thank you both so much. That was fantastic. Eddie, just to see what you see on the ground. I love all the riffs and takeaways. Greg, thanks for actioning that in the tool. Clear to see how you can get from the signals and the data, as Eddie put it, to some POCs, POVs, and then products. That was amazing. Thank you both. There are some awesome questions in the chat I want to make sure we get to. I know we're tight on time. So as far as Eddie, thank you for the answers here. This is awesome. So Valentina had a question that says, do these phases correlate to different diverse prompting techniques as well? So to get from crawl, walk, run, are you changing the way you're prompting the model?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if they correlate necessarily in the sense, if I understand the question, would you have different prompting techniques for each stage? I think it depends because the idea here is that if you divide a problem and kind of attack it in small chunks, building blocks, so it's possible that the way the problem is best solved is first to, test a single prompt and a prompt technique on a bit of data and then apply the same prompt just to more data. But it could be also that the problem, like the way that you break and you show some initial value, is to first do one transformation of that data, and then there's a completely different prompt that can be applied to that to bring it to the next level of value. So I would say there's not a correlation, but certainly, you can mix and match different prompts at each of the steps in order to kind of improve on the results at each step.
We had another question, Greg, I'll open up to you and Eddie. Evans asked, many organizations are not actually clear on where the AI can help in the business process. So in your experience, what's the best way for a company to figure out the actual gaps in their workflow before they move to address them?
I think what I said in the chat back to Evans was start with the problem and not with AI. Don't buy the AI and then apply that to the data and the problem. That won't result in a success for you, Evans. Start the other way around. What is your goal? What is your problem? What you're trying to solve? And then either your cloud provider or somebody like Greg and HumanFirst can then help figure out how you get to solving that. So identify the problem and then get your partners engaged early. I mentioned education and enablement is something that we are supposed to give you as part of our service to you as our customer, and we're more than willing to do that. So, get us to do that for you by coming in and helping you do that. Start with the problem, bring in the experts. I hesitate to say that, but bring in Greg and myself, and we'll help you figure out the workflow and what you need to do in order to get to the solution you're looking for. That's where I would start.
I would agree, Eddie.
Beautiful. Well, sadly, I think that's all we have time for. I want to thank you both so much, Eddie and Greg, for being here, the time you put in, and really want to thank the audience. It was a great showing all the way through. So thanks for taking a full hour out of your day to come talk about questions, ideas, explorations. We love feedback, more ideas, more exploration. So please do get in touch. Greg and Eddie both available on LinkedIn for further discussions, but also our team. You can visit our website, you can book a meeting, you can send an email with something you're thinking about. We love to hear it all. So yeah, really grateful to you both. Looking forward to more discussions on the topic as we continue to explore these kinds of applications for prompt and data engineering. So with that, I'll conclude. Wish everyone a great rest of your day and hope to see you guys at the next event. Thank you.
Good to see you, Greg. Good to see you, Lauren. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the questions.
Very much, Lauren. Thank you, Eddie, and thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great day.